to welcome everybody. A huge thanks to our speakers, first and foremost tonight, Carlos Reyes, Maria Guzmán, Kathia St, Hilaire, and Esteban Cabeza de Baca. Thanks also to Zuna Maza, our assistant curators, who's going to be moderating tonight's talk. Tonight I'm joined by one of the co-curators of the TRIENAL, Susanna Temkin, together with Maria Helena Ortiz. The three of us have been put this show together, the result of many months, years of work, studio visits, research in the fields. So it's a true honor to welcome the speakers and introduce them. I'm going to just paraphrase something that was written about this show, which I think it really illustrates well the spirit of the exhibition. The second triennial survey at our Museo del Barrio, Flow States, is loosely organized around the concept of diasporas and the movements of people across nations, geographies, and cultures. A major point the exhibit tries to make is that the current state of Latino art, which is the focus of these triennials, ours, has been shaped by those movements because Latino identities are inevitably the result of complex mixtures and interactions. So I think this is from the New Yorker review of the show. I think it really defines the spirit of the exhibition in a quite precise way. And as such, this is an exhibition that portrays a multiplicity of voices and artistic languages, countering stereotypical ideas and cliches about Latinidad, which I think it's a very important mandate of this project. So I just want to also make a quick announcement and that the exhibition will actually have a staggered closing. Some galleries will remain open through March 16, but the last day to view the full exhibition is February 9th. So please spread the word. Make sure you invite friends, and if they want to see the show in its entirety, it's February 9th. It's their deadline. Just a quick nod to our wonderful sponsors, starting with the Gelman Foundation. This exhibition is made possible by the Jacques and Natasha Gelman Foundation. Leadership support is provided by the Rockefeller Brothers Fund. Major support is provided by the National Endowment for the Arts and Tony Bechara. And generous funding is provided by the Max M Cultural Foundation and the Trienal Council. Patrick Collins, Virginia Cole Scroth, Agnes Gund, Maria Eugenia Maure, Ramiro Ortiz Mayorga, Kunal Shah, Monica Vidal, and Joseph Sherman. And also is supported by Marilyn Pearl Losberg, Javier Lumbreras, Isabel and Julio Nazario, Robert and Encarnita Quinlan, Tracy and Philip Rees, and by the New York City Department of Cultural Affairs. Very important to mention everybody who made this show possible. Thank you all for being here. And please, Susanna.
Welcome all, and I won't spend too much time on the microphone. I know we're all here to hear the artists, but I just want to share with you all a little bit about the concept of tonight's event. We're calling it Slow Flow, and that idea really came out of dialogues that we had with the four artists that we'll be hearing from today. We knew we wanted to do an event to sort of mark the end of the full entirety of the show. And as we were talking, we really came together to discuss what does it mean to take a pause, to take a step back, and to look back on the implications, the experiences of this show. And we'll hear more from each of the artists on that, but I feel like that is particularly poignant in these recent days, months that we're all experiencing, where we're talking about flow and movement. There's a lot of happening around us. There's a lot of noise. And so I think having this moment together in reflection about art and life is really, I think, something that we should all be celebrating, taking a slower approach to one another in our community. So with that, I will pass the mic to Assistant Curator Zuna Maza, who will be leading our discussion today. And thank you all for coming.
Welcome, everybody. Bienvenido a todos. Thank you all for joining us for Flow State's Trienal 24, this conversation called Flow, So Flow. And before we turn to the artist, I wanted to briefly introduce them to you in the order that they will be presenting. Esteban Cabeza de Baca employs a broad range of painterly techniques to create, as described by artist Tara Krajnak, multi-dimensional timescapes, entwining layers of graffiti, landscape, and pre-Columbian pictographs in ways that confound Cartesian single-point perspective. Born in San Isidro, California, Cabeza de Baca lives and works between Queens, New York, and southwestern United States. Kathia St. Hilaire memorializes the communities of South Florida that she has been a part of through innovative printmaking techniques. Her work draws inspiration from Haitian voodoo flags, which are used to tell the country's history and honor ancestral spirits. Using non-traditional materials such as beauty product packaging, banknotes, produce stickers, she creates ornate tapestries that seek to preserve Haitian history and the voodoo religion that lives on in South Florida. St. Hilaire was born in Palm Beach, Florida, and lives and works in New York City. Maria Guzmán Capron creates lush, multi-layered textile works that offer a physical manifestation of the polyvalent influences that shape us, emphasizing that we consist of several identities. By contrasting common fibers like cotton with luxurious fabrics like silk, offcuts, store-bought fabrics, Guzmán Capron addresses material hierarchies in art and fashion to parallel the power dynamics that exist within class and gender. Born in Milan, Italy, Guzmán Capron lives and works in Oakland, California. And lastly, Carlos Reyes explores the formal qualities of ephemeral phenomena, heat, light, breath, pressure, as they are imprinted onto material sites and objects. Reyes exhumes spaces and systems that are socially or politically produced and gestures towards the networks of circulation, use, and exchange that shape these movements through their sculptural repositioning. Born in Chicago, Illinois, Reyes lives and works between Caguas, Puerto Rico, and New York City. So, without further ado, we'll start with Esteban.
Should I introduce some of the work, or?
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you guys for all coming here. It's a joy to share the stage with such nice artists, and I'm looking forward to the conversation. So with the painting that I exhibited here at Museo del Barrio, I was thinking a lot about the migration passages of not only human beings from Mexico to New Mexico to Colorado, and the pathways that existed before 1492, and that how painting could model and map thoroughfares and ways at which humans have relayed and conversed and traded for centuries, but also how nature is essential in its migration of different birds, pollinator species, and different ways of capturing that were a lot of my ethos for the painting that I have on exhibit in the gallery. So I don't want to talk too much because I want to give enough time to everybody, but it's been a real joy to get to share this painting with everybody. And I guess we have a couple more slides, or?
I think you have a few, but we can move forward.
Yeah.
I'll turn to you, Kathia.
Okay. So, hi, my name is Kathia, and I've always been interested, in nature. I've grew up in a lot of nature in South Florida. I've grown up in different communities, like West Palm Beach, Fort Lauderdale, and Miami. And I've always been, enamored by the things that I would buy at a beauty supply store. So, knowing that, these are things that I've grown up with, and I've always had this attachment to it, and not knowing why. I've always been interested in in trying to figure out what makes me so drawn to these objects. So even moving past the beauty products, I'm thinking about just national news I've grown up with, especially in the early 2000s, seeing a lot of protests, either like whether it was in Haiti or even in the Middle East, I've always been drawn to like the symbol of tires, different types of food that's always been in like my foods that my family's cooked, and always curious about like where things originated from. So I don't know, where do I guess next slide. So I've always been a fan of Marilyn Constance's work. I've always enjoyed the labor that goes into it, but most importantly, like knowing that like, voodoo is just a way to connect to your past loved ones. I was interested in seeing how could I incorporate this into a printmaking language. So often, I've spent like a lot of my times just, collecting things, but also like experimenting with different print process and thinking about like printmaking as a way to like represent like history and repetition. So these are like shots of like me printing work in my studio. So I usually print 40 to 50 layers of these, and they're printed like one day after the other day, and it helps builds up this like surface that are to for me to have like almost like a similar language to voodoo flags instead of me making the flags on my own. So being able to collage material on top of them and the materials I've collected, this is how like the two works in the show came about.
Then I'll turn to you, Maria.
Hello, thank you for having me. And I am showing you a few slides, starting with one that shows some of the drawing process. I don't think of them as sketches. I see them more as their own parallel body of work, but I get a lot of ideas and a lot of through my drawing practice, I get to like push an idea into the paper and have that kind of capture really the energy that comes in that way. The textile works are much more labored and take a lot of time, so it's nice to have this balance in the studio. And in the next slide, I'm showing you some of the production, like of the printmaking, of the screen printing that I did to produce all the fabric for the piece that is here at El Museo. So every piece of fabric has been touched in some way, and it's a way of if all this fabric I collected and found in different places, from discount fabric store, thrift stores. And some donations even, but then to be able to make them my own. So I screen print these drawings on them and patterns. It was very important that I find a lot of agency and power in making this work, and it was very important for me to share that with the people that came to see the exhibition. And and that's why there's an element in which the curtains can move and are activated by people, and also you see a little paper cutout with a bench that people can sit and be part of the exhibition as well. Thank you.
And now we'll turn to you, Carlos.
Okay. So the piece that I presented here at El Museo is titled Promesa, so I thought I'd just kind of outline that because some people don't know why that title and what it is. So it stands for the Puerto Rico Oversight, Management and Economic Stability Act. Which, whatever, like that title for that thing is kind of weird, but it, it's promise, and it's a it's a board that is charged with creating austerity measures in Puerto Rico to sort of get it out of its economic crisis, as they call it. So, if you go back really quickly, it's based on that plus Luma Energy, which is the privatized company that's sort of dealing with all the power, restructuring the power grid in Puerto Rico, and they kind of delineate each area, and so those are the 7 areas that they have. Where I live is in Caguas, Puerto Rico. The next lamp, you'll go back and forth. This is the first iteration of that sculpture that I made, which has a light bulb for each area. And so the way that this sculpture works is that those lights are tethered to the energy grid in Puerto Rico. So if the light goes out in Caguas, the light will go out in that particular lamp. If the power is at 70% in San Juan, then the power is at 70% in San Juan. If there's zero power in Mayagüez, then there's zero power. So it's constantly modulating itself based on real-time information from Luma Energy, which is what we went. If you go back really quickly, it's constantly monitoring percentage of customers without power. You can see that that's just a screenshot. So that's the sort of backbone of the work. This is the formal quality, and now this right here is, then I started taking each town and kind of doing smaller versions of the larger lamp. And so this is the first individual one. This is San Juan and wherever it is. Oh, so these second 2.0 or whatever we want to call them are tethered. One side of the lamp is tethered to wherever it is placed in the world, and the other side is constantly modulating based on the power usage in that particular town. So this is the first one that I made of that. This is San Juan, and in this case it was Canada, Montreal. And Museo asked me to, they were so great in commissioning a new work, and we had been talking about it. So then for me, the next logical thing at that point, I was living in Caguas. The one that I made in San Juan, I was living in San Juan. So I was just sort of doing that. This is kind of, I just thought I'd throw this in because this is the first thing that I came up with just to get the ball rolling, the conversation going. And from this, we'll see where it ultimately ended up. So that was the first one, and this is where I landed with the formal qualities of the work. So this is the piece installed in the gallery, and that's Caguas and New York. This is an addendum. I just thought it was kind of interesting. The first iteration with the huge lamp, that was done in 2019? Sometimes I forget my own dates, 2018. This is the computer, this is the Raspberry Pi, all the guts, all the stuff that we had to do with the first iteration of that piece. And it's just cool that in like 4 or 5 years, all of that is in the light bulb now. So like you could just theoretically put in the light bulb. And if you want to be tethered to Caguas at some time in the future, that could be possible because it's literally in the light bulb. So all that information can be modulated based on that. And so we developed a program where all of this stuff is happening in the light bulb. So this piece is the first time we use that technology. So it's a lot. There's not as many chords in that piece. This is the first one. So that's the background of that work.
Thank you to all 4 of you for kind of giving us a little primer of the works in the show. I guess I'll turn now to some questions to get us started. How has the context of flow states, specifically the centering of creative focus and the fluidity of geographic boundaries and cultural exchanges, expanded or transformed your understanding of your artwork in the show or your practice overall?
Cool. Yeah, I guess I'll go first. I guess the first thing.
Big question. Sorry.
No, it's great. I guess the first thing that it made me think of when I was, in process of developing the work was also like my mentor John Quick-to-See Smith, who just recently passed, and her show called Memory Map, where her work is constantly questioning borders and colonial notions of territory. And I think for the work in the show, I wanted to break those colonial notions of borders, who's included in, who's included out, who's demonized historically, and who's given free pass to migrate, and different privileges associated with flow that I think I was really interested in. But I think the concept of like a memory map for me within the work at Museo when I was developing it in process was like, how do I show on ecological level what environments used to look like, what it looks like now, and possible hopeful futures alongside strings or portals towards daunting challenges that we'll face also. So I guess in process for this work that I was developing, but also just getting to see it too. It's just interesting to be in dialogue with all of the other artists. So.
Well, I mean, I think I was like, well, not I think, I know I focused on the America's intervention of Latin America in the early 1900s. So thinking about, the topic of imperialism and how imperialism affects how, like during that time period, a lot of it isn't recorded, like the histories of the people. So I think about like a lot of when America does invade Haiti in the early 1900s, you have the perspectives of the Marines, and I only have like the perspective of like my great grandmother and my grandmother, and along with my mother, of like their like history that's like passed down. So knowing that like when I was focusing on at least like this intervention, a lot of it wasn't really like I wasn't able to historically go verify this, but I could verify it through different parts of, like through different family members or different people who were living during that time. And also what I was like interested in with like during the intervention is how connected Latin America was. So knowing that like issues that were happening like with interventions, I don't know, in like Puerto Rico or Cuba, Haiti was also like hearing and seeing this. So the way that they resisted intervention was something that I was like interested in. So I guess like when I'm thinking about like flow states and how it like influenced me, it really made me, instead of just thinking about this like one island of Haiti, or like even thinking about like me as like a Haitian American, it made me really think that like our histories are super connected in a way.
No, totally.
For me, was to be part of this exhibition was very important because I think about the Latina identity as fluid and complicated. We are all a lot of immigrants are embodying these geographies, these cultures that become parts of ourselves. In my case, my father is Colombian, my mother is Peruvian. I was born somewhere else. I have all these places that are part of my history and my personal history, and I know and I see that in other people around me that they have their own combinations and histories and heritage, and so it was trying to be part of this exhibition. It was to be seen and acknowledged as part of it, as part of this Latina identity that is fluid and complicated, and it was very special. And also to see other people as part of it. I like that the work is encouraging an audience to accept identities that are fluid, that are always changing, and that they are influenced by our surroundings, our context, and the people that we meet, and how that builds us, that keeps on making us every day. Thank you.
So the prompt of flow states, that was, for me, was pretty, I don't want to say easy, but I was like, yes, flow states, but it's recently, so like there's been so much going on. The piece, I think, has so much to do with sharing conditions, right? Not just sharing a like, but like literally sharing a condition. If the light goes out there, the light goes out here, that type of thing. And just this week, I was thinking about how that piece is going to look in a month when the austerity measures are going to keep coming. Like, we're already talking about that on the island just this past, it started Monday or something. It's getting heated. People are talking about it. They are taking Dominicans out. This is all part of the flow state. And those things that they're doing now, I feel like there's something else going on. Meanwhile, they are thinking about restructuring FEMA and giving it to different, sending it back down to the states. Now, all those austerity measures will affect any type of disaster relief. And, you know, I think about what that piece is going to sort of unfold into next year. How is that going to look? And after another disaster or another category, whatever. So that's sort of something that's been on my brain as it's being displayed publicly, how, you know, it's not just about that one point, it's about like how it will sort of grow into the future of different, you know, policies, different administrations next year, 4 years. Maybe there'll be a time when, gosh, it's got energy all the time, 100%. It'll be a different piece, but if next year things go differently, that's going to be half off a lot of the time, you know. So that's something that's been on my brain recently, is how, you know, it's constantly updating itself, and with that update, it's also reflecting the political structure around itself, you know, so.
I think that's kind of one of the power points of this show, the ways in which these threads, these narratives, these works, they kind of continue to evolve as we see our landscape change and, you know, our turmoil in this country and beyond, but it's the continual relevance of the work that you all do and all these different artworks. But I also wanted to turn to this idea of slowing down, because I think all of your practices and artworks do practice some form of slowing us down, be it, you know, labor-intensive practices or, you know, research, or just literally asking us to pause. So I kind of wanted to ask you, you know, how does this idea of slow flow speak to you? And it can be to the artwork in the show, but it could be overall. Like, how do you practice this in your own work and life, even?
So I think a lot about balance. Being from San Isidro, California, but then also having my mom, who just recently got her birth certificate to Mexico. So now trying to establish myself as both Mexican citizen and an American citizen, that, you know, people go back and forth between TJ and working back and forth, and how do you just stay spiritually and physically balanced has been something that my parents have tried to instill into me, and what I try and do with my students, you know. But I think from just everything that's kind of going on, it's the studio that's essential to just slowing down and getting away from social media and the surveillance that can sometimes invade our daily routine of being an artist. But I think also a great moment of this show is just being in communion and developing a larger community with the selected artists from the show, of just being able to walk through the exhibition, and formally it doesn't feel like it is only relegated to a show about identity. It also can function as like contributions to innovations in art history that have been overlooked, whether it's through craft, whether it's through research. And I think that idea of slowing down is also something that just getting to experience the show, it formally just gets you to question things, but also gets you to think about it historically and conceptually, about just the way an idea can influence and have cross-pollination, that it's a good experience to walk through and see.
I mean, I think like one major way I guess like I slow down is through literature. Literature I feel like is very important to me. So, I mean, of course, like in this show, I was inspired by 100 Years of Solitude by Gabriel Marquez, but also reading, you know, Edwin Danticat was like another writer that I've always been interested in. I think I'm especially connected to like Edwin's work because Edwin's Danticat, because she, you know, it's not like we had similar lives, but it's what I do know, it's that her experience that she writes about being an immigrant coming from Haiti, hearing, you know, a lot of family news, not being able to go back, and especially was like this symbolism of like the butterfly and how that's seen as like, you know, the bearer of bad news, the symbolism of like, you know, death. Like, I thought that was like an interesting way to like, you know, inspires like the next painting, even like was 100 Years of Solitude, like with a lot of the magical realism that goes on in that book. I mean, I think like it allowed me to think like, oh yeah, if ever, like it makes me like have to worry about to catch up to all like the Jose's or Cartier, like all the names that changes, opposed to like me like, you know, trying to focus on like, I don't know, what's happening worldly, because I'm trying to understand like the novel. So you know, having these things that like change, and also having a practice that's a labor intensive and also very heavily research based in materials, I think those things really just keep me busy. So it's like I'm never really ever done. So I think that's like how I stay like at least like slow.
Yeah, slowing down. I feel like sometimes I'm able to do it, and it feels really good, but sometimes I can't. There's so much. I feel like I'm going from one to the other. The studio is definitely a place in which I can take that time. I'm not always ready to do all this sewing that I need to do, all that labor. Like sometimes I sit for like 4 hours straight sewing something, and I'm like, why does my leg hurt? You know, and it's just like, oh, it's just I've been pressing this pedal for all this time. But you get kind of lost in that too, in the craft, in the sewing, in the making. But more than that, I feel like when I take the time to like put music, dance a little, like feel rhythm, feel the body itself, feeling, and stop like, because the brain can keep going for nonstop about everything you need to do, pick up my daughter, take her somewhere else, doing the groceries, all the things that it's very, the everyday domestic life that holds you, you know, that kind of in some way makes you real in some way, and then to be able to go to studio and lose that connection for a bit to everything else. So I think it's, for me, slowing down becomes, you know, having that space, that physical space that is set aside to make the work. But also sometimes it's just taking care of my physical body, like the walking, exercising, and dancing. Thank you.
I like dancing.
Yeah, it's just like it feels good.
Yeah, definitely. Dancing in the studios.
Yeah.
Like, I think we probably like a bunch of interviews with artists when they dance in their studios.
Right.
Slowing down for me, so a lot of times in Puerto Rico, I have this mantra, say Puerto Rico, PR, patience required. It's like, especially if you're coming from New York or have been born in the US and then spend time in wherever, and then visiting Puerto Rico is one thing. Patience required, great. You wait 45 minutes for a coffee. Ooh, chill, like you're by the beach. Like, oh, cool, I'm learning something. You wait 6 months to get hot water. You're like, patience required. You wait, 12 hours in an emergency room just to get your blood pressure taken or something like that. It's like patience required. It takes on a different level. It's stressful slowness. And not, because out of that anxiety, whatever, you birth something else. So that's one thing. And then in relation to that, I've been thinking a lot about, and I think the piece speaks to some of those issues, the light going out. And it started with one day I was with my mom. This is a true story, backstory. The light went out. I said, se fue la luz. Everyone, and then normal, just like the light went out, breathe, next. Versus if the light goes out in New York, no way. People are like freaking out, like they are calling Con Ed. Where's the thing? Where's the status update? What's going on? I need to work. Different story there. So there's that flow. But then I was thinking about this today too when I was walking around, how that's slowing down. Also, the things that in the past have been like normal. Like today I was at Essex Market. And I mean, I was there in the old Essex market, and I've seen the new Essex market, and I've definitely had pizza there and the Peruvian food there, and but I walked in there today after like a few weeks or months of slowness. I haven't been there, and I was like, oh my God, so it's like they're slowing down, but then it's weirdly affects the way your perception of speed in New York too. So it's like this constant modulation of like slowness that require anxiety from not having this thing that your dopamine addicted brain has gotten used to, and then you're like, no power, like no internet. So there's a lot of slow flow there.
For sure. I mean, kind of turning into your work, Carlos, but the slowing down that Promesa does is you have to wait, or you have to let it evolve in front of you. It may flicker, it may not. I've caught it a few times flickering. I'm surprised how little, I see it, but I know it happens.
December 31st, January 1st, and January 2nd.
Yes.
If it had been open, we were all like in that slowness.
So thinking about how this work kind of shows you, it shows you the slow process of time and these intermissions, but I also think for Maria's work, like it invites us to participate, to reveal the work to us, to kind of ignite it. And for Kathia, it's like I'm always trying to look at these layers and these materials and what it tells me, but then the full picture, it forces me to slow down. And I think that's same for Esteban's work. Like it's trying to parse out all these elements. What are the perspectives? What are the viewpoints, the materials? Which I think all four of you have such interesting approaches to material, which I think speaks to the show itself, sort of the range of artistic production and innovation. So if I could pivot us to more formal topics, but what is your relationship to material? How did you really arrive to this way of making? Has it changed? Where do you stand now? A lot of options.
Yeah, I guess the painting on exhibit, it came from just dying, transitioning to building like a base layer of tie-dye that's just really abstract and sort of alchemical a little bit, that just feels less daunting than just looking at a bare white canvas. But it's also incorporating like ancient Mexican ways of building up color with cochinilla, but in this case it's indigo. But it's been fun just to learn different ways of just thinking about process and slowness. And I like what Carlos said about just like how slowing down can just get you inside of your own body, but also be a form of, at least for me, like medicine, of just tapping into my own work. And I don't know, I think it's been nice just to see other people's techniques. But I don't know, I don't know. That'd be my first response to that question.
Totally.
Well, like I'm a big fan of just collecting things. I'm a person that I go to the beauty supply store just to buy like art, like supplies. So what made me interested in, like, at least like into making, is knowing that I'm able to it just helps with my anxiety. It's just like instead of me thinking about the bigger idea I'm trying to convey, because usually the idea comes after, I'm more so concerned on thinking about my viscosity of ink. I'm thinking about thinking about weaving these skin lightening creams, opening them up, cleaning them off so I can just weave them together to weave them back into the paintings, and then thinking about how do I adhere this on, what type of glue would I use, what type of tweezers do I need to pull them through. So knowing that I have to think about these small things in order for me to make the work makes me interested in different modes of making. So it's I think what got me through that was just having families of makers. So it's knowing that there's different modes of making and different and also different traditions in that, and putting that in a contemporary idea, and also figuring out how I don't have these traditional materials, nor do I want to emulate them, because it's I don't know, I just feel since I'm not directly from that place or that culture or that time period, it feels, I don't know, not I guess not as, it just doesn't feel right to me. So trying to make my own materials to be connected to like the past is something that I've always been really interested in.
So I tell this story that I told a few times, but it was, for me, I did feel this moment. And it was moving to United States about when I was like 17 and going to thrift stores for the first time, and this giant Houston thrift stores, and seeing all sorts of like clothes, fabric, from like your towels, sheets, to clothing that was like from completely different generations, different cultures, all mixed together in one place, in this landscape of color and pattern. And really, I mean, I was painting at the time, and I was like, I want this. And I didn't know what that meant, but I wanted to capture what these textiles were doing together, that collection. And it's to be able to, because fabric, which is what I love to use, has that embedded in it, the material itself. It makes us think of our bodies, of our domestic spaces, our blankets that take care of us and warm us when it's cold, our coats. All of this language and function is trapped within these fibers. So for me, it was like taking that as my language as well to make. Because it felt like there was more room. There was a room for invention on how to make, which I think in some ways in common to Hilaire's work. The fact that I didn't feel like there was a way to make with these things that I knew. I didn't know how to sew. and so that I could make my own ways, my own processes. And from there, it's just like, there really is a lot of pleasure in working with this material.
So, I was saying that story about hanging out at home with my mom and the power went out. And, well, not the one time, the many times that it happens. But this one time in particular is when this light bulb went off in my head, maybe. Thanks. So it was like, oh, that's my material, right? That moment of the power going out. How do I? So that's the beginning, and then you just start like, how do I do this? And then, so the material. But the other thing about material and joy is, this is a secret. Sometimes when the power goes out, I kind of like when the power goes out. Like it's supposed to be this, it's frustrating. So this is very personal. I don't like it for a community at large, I don't like it for a country too. But secretly, there's a little bit of like, fuck that, like nothing, it's all off. Like now I can just be like, read a book, go outside, cook, with a gas stove. So it's those moments, that thing that's supposed to be, it's true. Like the last time the power went on, I was like, all right, great. Like, it's New Year's Day. Like, it's not great, but also I was breathing differently, You're not worried about sending everyone Happy New Year's messages. You're just going to check, on your aunt or whatever. And so those moments of complicated feelings towards the material is sort of what I was sort of interested in, and that's kind of some sort of like the genesis of some of these ideas in terms of materiality.
Thank you for that.
Yeah.
I also wanted to maybe disrupt this. So if you have questions for each other, please, it's no pressure whatsoever, but I feel like there's a lot of synergies to explore if you have them. But again, no pressure. I wanted to kind of kind of come back to the slowing down and think about replenishing, nurturing, even protecting like creativity in this moment, where there's hyper immediacy. And I think Carlos was already thinking about ways to kind of do this, like a forced disruption from outside.
Move to Puerto Rico.
Like hyper immediacy, endless content, and political upheaval, which we are experiencing. So how do you all protect your creativity in this moment or nurture it?
Yeah, I was like thinking about just pausing at some points, that you can't, or nor should you always react. I think sometimes growing up in a certain specific socioeconomic, like I was always sort of forced to react, and how to stop that and like slowly build up a conscientious plan and like thinking through community conversations, but also talking, is just like not what certain powers want us to do, to like think conscientiously, to think ecologically with our communities. And I think that work of just pausing sometimes, either in our studio practices with materials that like my cohort are innovating with in their own realms, or being in a slow conversation with my mom or with my family or something like that. That's medicine to me that I think will help us get through whatever challenges,
I mean, I think what Carlos said, when the lights go out, when the power go out, that is my favorite time.
Yeah.
Like, because especially like, I mean, most people, I love going through hurricanes. I mean, the only reason why, because it's like the only opportunity.
That's such a Caribbean thing.
It's the only, it's literally the time where like everyone in your family has to be together. Like, and it's like, you don't know what's going to happen. Everyone is their like your clear, valid self. And it's like, I'm scared, but at the same time, it's like a Turner-esque painting, because I remember I went through Irma, and I was like, Irma's not going to be that bad, whatever. And it was like one of the worst storms I think I've experienced in my life. So I was like really interested in the fact that like, it was slow. We don't know what's going to happen. It's like, because I feel like now it's like everyone knows where you, like, I think it's creepy now when people look at your story and say, you were here, why didn't you? And I'm like, I should have never posted it. But it's like... It's like, like when the lights do go out, you really don't know what's going to happen next. So it's like that
You're
curiosity.
in the moment.
Yeah, you really do have to be in the moment. It's like an unfortunate time to be in the moment, but it's like really, that's kind of like how I feel like everything gets preserved for me. It's like these like moments of uncertainty, and the things that like give you like the immediate, like the things that are immediate, the most immediate are gone, but you're just more so focused on like how to survive that moment, regardless of how traumatic it is. I mean, it sounds kind of, but it's very sublime, but it's like, that's kind of like how I feel like I experience Haitian culture. It's like so many crazy things could happen to like, that's happened to like people in my family, and they're just like, yeah, no, it's just casual. So it's like it really isn't, when I'm thinking like, I guess like in my American like mindset. But I guess that's kind of like how I preserve.
Sloan.
I'm the opposite of you guys. It's like you want to live in a state of panic. It's like that, but for me, well, what I think what has worked, because it's been, we all been artists here for a little bit now, and it's how many, I've worked many jobs and made art. I've done, all sorts of things while making art. So it's like, it's become a practice of protecting the creative times that, you are allowed to have through a lifetime. And I feel like I'm getting better at it, because it used to be much more unhealthy, probably, before, in which, like, I don't know, like I could either obsess over one thing or obsess over the other. And I'm trying to get into that balance of like, well, I guess it helps that like my family knows that I would get really grumpy. Like I get grumpy if I'm not going to studio. They're like, Maria hasn't been, and, she needs to go. And then I come back and I'm all happy again. So it's it works. It has to be, for me, it has to be a practice. It has to be scheduled, it has to be protected, and it has to fit in the everyday, because it's just, if not, everything unravels, and I feel like I'm responsible for other people, so it has to happen in that way. So,
Yeah,
Are you scared
I
of
don't
me
mind.
now?
No, a little bit, yeah. There's some of the panic thing is, what did you say? Like, we like panic.
You guys like a state of panic.
A state of panic, where you get to a point where that state of panic like boils over.
Yeah.
And at that point, that's kind of maybe what I'm talking about, that interesting thing of this, does that, whatever you want to call it, uncomfortable situation, not being in the flow, like not even being in a flow, you're just out of the flow in terms of how information travels. So I don't know if it's protecting or just sort of, leaning into what is, I can't do anything about it, you know? So that becomes part of, my life.
Well, it sounded like it was liberating when you were describing it, like that moment of darkness.
It can be. You can.
It's like freedom.
Yeah, it's a little bit of that. There's a little bit of just maybe feeling like I'm in 1994, just sitting there, no phone, no whatever, just a book, a friend, hanging out, a coffee. Like, it's not, you don't do anything. You do stuff as long as there's light. You light the candle, you know. You go, you walk around, you walk outside, you listen to birds differently, because you don't hear the humming of everything. It's just sounds, you know. So there's some of that in terms of protecting the thing, but then there's not protecting too, and it's this flow. So you build all this momentum, kinetic and potential energy. You're building up all the potential energy, and then it's released, and you're in New York or whatever doing this, and guess what? All that slowness sort of helps with the speed of this place, because I can focus on having a coffee with someone as opposed to the speed that I was going at when I lived here, which is very fast, and not, even though I was in it, I wasn't really connecting with people. It was very transactional here sometimes.
I appreciate your answers. I mean, it was a bit of a selfish question, because I too asked myself how to preserve, the creativity, and it does oscillate between protecting your time and space and then maybe a little bit of chaos, because that's also a reality, I think, for all of us in the sort of creative art realm, unavoidable. But I wanted to invite people in the audience to, if they have any questions, comments, thoughts even about flow states, I would really love to hear them, and I know all of us here would like to as well. Don't be shy. And I'll give you mine.
Hi, my name is Chloe. Thank you so much for the comments and the wonderful questions from Zuna. I was very interested in, Kathia, what you said about how there are histories that are lost, and that you are finding a way to connect with those histories through your material process. And so actually my question is for both you and Maria, because I see the similarities in your materials of these associations of gender and women's labor, cosmetics, women's care. And I wonder, was there ever a moment in your career so far where someone tried to dissuade you from using these materials, or you felt like you had to defend that choice? I'm so glad that you did persevere and use those materials, because the work is wonderful. So thank you.
I think I was dissuaded, at least because when I started to collect, because the what's collaged into the work, they're different. They're the packaging of actual creams that like people in my family's used, that I've used. So like with this like skin lightening toner, it like the way that I feel like skin bleaching is talked about in the Caribbean, especially like in Jamaica and Haiti, it's very much like they don't necessarily want to talk about it, but then like when they do see you get a little dark, they're like, well, you would need this in order to like, then to become like an expert. Like first they start off shy, but then to become an expert. So it just goes back and forth. So I've always been interested in that nuance. And then when I started to collect them, I think like I started to collect like every like toner that we had. Like I started collecting in 2013. And I had so much of it. My mom she was the only person to discourage me. She's like, why do you have all these? Like, she just felt so embarrassed. But it's like, this is something that you invest your money into, and it's your money is going into it. Like, you care about this so much. So it's like, I didn't get pushback from like, you know, I think not, I guess like, not, like, I guess people who aren't users of the product. I mostly got pushback with people who felt like, oh no, this is like, I don't want to see what I've spent my whole time, like a lot of my life like buying. But I've always been interested in this idea of like, you know, these quiet, purchases that we do buy, these like things that we do choose to keep, I think in our house or, you know, close to our, like, that we don't feel like it's part of our culture, but it is part of our culture. There's like an underlaying to it. So I don't know if you would have thought, no problem.
Yeah, I definitely, there was discouraging, I don't know, moments, comments, and things like that throughout my art practice. But I don't know, it always felt like it was just reframing the context then, because the feminine was looked maybe, or the domestic, in a negative, with a negative connotation, and then it's just, for me, was about saying that that was a good thing, that it, you know, that came from these worlds, that came from the feminine world, the domestic world, and that it could be more even too, though. I don't think it has to stay there, but I think it can grow from there. And that the fact that it has these roots are what makes it powerful and stronger to become other things. So to me, it was something that energized me and pushed me to make more of this work.
I have to tell you quickly a little funny story. So I was walking through the exhibition because I'm going to Zuna Maza on Monday, and I've never been to Mexico City, and I said, I better come to our own TRIENAL. Did I pronounce that right? And then I like walked through it quickly, and I started to leave, and I said, I have so much more that I need to learn. And I came back into the building, and I walked through it slowly. And I was like, I did the exact opposite of what I should have done. So hence why I'm sharing that is, I went to the bathroom, and I came back to take pictures, and all the lights were out. And I said, oh my God, I didn't get pictures. I said, I got so absorbed in what you all spoke of with your work that I didn't take one photo, which is absurd for me. I have like 100,000 photos, and I write about art, and I have a podcast about art, so I took not a photo. So I went to the security guard. I said, would you turn the lights back on for me? It's actually only 5 of. And he turned them all on, and I went around and I took pictures. And I remember standing in front of yours, the first gentleman, I'm sorry. Esteban. And I was just looking at it so closely because I said, there's so much going on in this piece. I think I missed something. So I just want to say thank you for forcing me, or not forcing me, but giving me the opportunity to look harder, longer, slower. And then that was funny. I was waiting for your lights to turn on and off with the lamp, and then the guy's like, I gotta go. So I just thought I'd share that funny story, and also thank you all. All of your work is just also different, and I want to say it almost tastes good. It almost is like food, because it's also different and delicious and special. So thank you so much.
It's also the sign of a good party when you don't take pictures, or a good dinner.
That's right.
Because of the title of the exhibition, Flow States, we were talking about fluidity, change, the way that we have to be constantly reframing something because of the context and the moment that is constantly evolving. So I think this is a great opportunity to reframe the exhibition and to reframe the work because of the political moment that we're facing. In the last days, not even weeks, days, I think the world has dramatically changed. So I'm really, really curious, and maybe my question is not only for the artists, but also for the curators. How would you reframe an exhibition that precisely talks about fluidity? How will you reframe it in this new context that is so challenging for Latinos?
I don't know. There's like this new recent article that Dean Kissick wrote, The Painted Protest, that's in some ways like kind of skeptical of overly identifying artists and curating them, and skeptical of like indigenous biennials that, you know, but it's like some of the skepticism that is lauded at art exhibitions that address diaspora or art historical concepts that have not been given their due get more scrutiny than sometimes a retrospective of somebody like Ed Ruscha or something like that. So I actually feel like sometimes we as art professionals, whatever, we have to walk and chew gum, where we are at once addressing blind spots of art history that they've neglected and extracted to create modernism, while also being formally inventive and creating new ways of making a painting that haven't been done before. So I don't know, I think with the new challenges that are approaching, we just have to keep making weird, crazy art all the time too. So. Sorry, I didn't mean to.
Oh my God, it's such a... Oh, I forgot all about that one. Yeah, no, that's such like a very lofty question, because it's like, I know these are issues that are clearly very much ongoing. They've never went away. I do think it's very, I don't know how to answer it for you, but it's like, you know, these issues are still prevalent. You can't really, they'll probably, I mean, I don't know how to, I mean, they're not going to really go away. So it's like, I think like maybe just like the job of the artist is just to keep it, you know, prominent. So I guess, I mean, that's like the best answer to give, because it feels like it's 2016 all over again.
Yeah, but worst.
I was gonna, if I could answer, I don't think we need to change the position of the show. I think its very premise is serving, you know, as a way to counteract these kinds of, you know, political upheaval and our narratives. I think the premise itself is pretty much on point to what we, you know, need to be doing and discussing. And kind of what Esteban was saying, it's like you're doing both. Like, yes, and. So I think the show is kind of embracing things that people would rather we didn't. So I have no problem with it.
Thank you so much. Thank you. No, I just want to address Patrick's question, because I think it's important that you know, the events, when things happen in the world, whatever you did changes, right? So we can't help that. That's even a Duchampian notion, if we want. No, the dust accumulating on a piece of glass, if you will. But I think what really changed for me, you know, like between October and January, I'll put it this way, is that I think there's two words that were very important in the conceptualization of the show. There are solidarity. One is solidarity, and the other one is difference. No. And these are like two values that I think they have different weights right now. So yeah, just wanted to talk this.
Just to add, Rodrigo, and to say what I think you're saying in different words, I think the constant, and what you also said, Esteban, the pressure to do more, to always expand. You know, there's a concept of overflow. I was going to say, you all today, I approached this topic from slowness and being reactive to what's going on, thinking that I was taking a break, but being reactive to what's going on. And you all, in many ways, talked about abundance, and you made me think of overflow as a really positive thing. But there's a danger, right? There's overflow, and then there's drowning. And I think that's the tension of this show. But again, I also want to talk about the fact that, as I forget who said it, but someone up here, this museum, this show, sure, we're culturally specific, but I just want to applaud all of you, and also some of the artists from the show who are in the audience today. Like, you all are just incredible artists. You're not incredible Latinx artists. Some of you aren't even Latinx, and you all merited your way into this exhibition and into others. So it's really joyous to see what you're all doing for this show, and now what's happening for you in the future, and what you did before this too. So I don't know, that was not a very cohesive way to answer you, Patrick, but it's really to applaud you all. It's been such a joy, like on the personal note, we all worked with you for these past 2 years in studio visits, and it's so fun to hear from each of you and hear your voices and your personalities come out on the stage today.
If anyone else has a question or something to add.
Can anyone define Latinx?
How much time do you have?
I guess it might be me.
This is a good question, right? Really, because it's a lot of what, I'm sorry to steal the microphone. A lot of what we've done was try not to define it. Yeah. What's that? No, you can. There's many ways, and there's a lot of, endless conversation if the term is valid, is current. But I'm saying with these ideas like difference, solidarity, hospitality, we want to, just expand the notion, I think. But, sorry, I just couldn't help it.
Maybe start out what the basic thing was, because you're just basically saying, what can you define what most people think of it? Why Latinx? Is that what you're... Yeah. I don't want to. I can, but maybe somebody.
It's a term that's been coined 10 years ago, roughly, a little more, that uses gender non-conforming language to define Latino in terms of Latin American populations in the United States of America.
As I understand
okay?
it, it's not Latino or Latina, it's Latinx, so that you're not gendering.
You're not gendering,
That's the basic. And then from there, there's all kinds of people who agree, who don't, who see it as coming up short, who want to, but
Latine.
Latine. So
Latine, exactly, but no passport required, right? I think this is the idea is that we create a space that is more porous, and what these identities don't have to be set in stone, monolithical, and
they're only as good as.
But they're more mutant. They are more porous. They embrace this idea of hospitality, like having our fellow Filipino artists in the exhibition, for instance, or artists who are much more self-identify as indigenous or as Afro-diasporic, but that are part of this conversation. And this is, I think, it's what's really important to make this space not about one defining factor, but a more relational notion of identity, in my opinion, 2 cents.
I think that's a good note to end on, maybe. On the Latinos, yeah. No, but I mean to add maybe to that, just to say that identities are how they serve people, and they have to evolve to serve different, populations. And I think that's the spirit of Latinx, like thinking about ways to evolve the term, but it doesn't suit everyone. It's not a one-size-fits-all, and the show proves that, it's expansive. It can start different conversations. So. But if there's anyone else who had a question, I don't want to shut you out. But yeah, or if anyone here wants to add anything else. Okay. Well, thank you, everyone, for attending. Thank you all. My colleagues have very rightfully reminded me to share that, yes, the show will be extended through March 16th, but if you want to see galleries 1 and 2, please try to do so before February 9th and spread the word. And then we have Super Sábado on February 9th. 8th. Mala mía. Sorry.
Saturday, February 8th. Yeah.
Thank you. So that's our next event as well. And Esteban and Koyo Sitli and other artists in the show will be there as well. So yeah, please join us if you can.
And a small commercial, the catalog. I think the catalog is a very important component of the show. If you are able to buy and get it, it's really important. I think what is addressed in the text is really important. So,
thank you. Great note.
Thank you.